Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Happy Sunday, everybody. I picked a great time to get the hiccups, but we'll motor through it. Boy. Today we're going to hit on a couple of tips for a couple of the tool paths We'll get into the sketch carving toolpath a little bit. Peripherally, I'll talk about the molding toolpath, and we'll get into a couple of other things associated with all of these toolpaths. But first, I need to give a shout out, and I do this at the beginning of every show for a reason. And that shout out is to Steve over at Harneal Media, who is the sponsor of Mark Lindsay CNC.com. Now, if you're looking to get your products, your services out to the masses, there's no better way to do it than with a website. And Steve can help you out with that. He can set you up an e-commerce site, make you a web store where you can put your models, your patterns, your designs, or the cool things you carve out to the masses without somebody taking a piece of the pie, paying that commission to list it where you're in competition with 100 other makers as somebody's looking at your product. He can hook you up with a print on demand company that will take care of inventory, take care of collecting taxes and all that other good stuff. So you can design your merch, put it up on your store, and let folks pick and choose for themselves. Again, you don't worry about any of that stuff. You just watch the orders come in. Steve is very, very competitively priced. And for the service, I don't know. I think he's underpriced for the service that you get because it's 100% personalized service. And I still don't know how he does everything he does and still manage to sleep. But somehow he does it. And that's probably the best part about it is when you deal with Harneal Media, you deal with Steve. It's a small operation with global reach, I'm here to tell you. You won't be talking to some nameless, faceless person in a call center somewhere that you'll never contact again. You'll deal with Steve 100% of the time. So check him out. There's a link to Harneal Media in every video on this channel, and it's that way for a reason. That's harnealmedia.com. Head over there, hit that contact us link, and have a chat with Steve. He'll hook you right up. Thank you for everything that you do, Steve. I appreciate the heck out of it more than you'll ever know. Now, let's get into a few things about, I'm going to start with the sketch carving toolpath because there are a few things about it that there are a few misconceptions and a few things that people don't understand about it. And I'm going to kind of take this in stages here. This is a very, very simple, high contrast image. And for something like this, it is a toss-up between whether the sketch carving toolpath would do a better job on it, or if the standard bitmap trace would do a better job on it. But I'm going to go ahead and use it to demonstrate the sketch carving toolpath. And probably the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to resize it. I just imported it at its regular size, but I'm going to go ahead and increase the size of it just to make it a little bit easier, A, for you to see, and B, for me to do a few modifications on it. So I'm going to make sure link XY is checked, and I'm going to increase the size to 10 inches square. And I'll apply that and close it. Now, I'll just go over here and show you exactly what it's going to do when we run it through the sketch carving toolpath. And what we're going to do first of all is we're going to make sure that we're sketch carving a bitmap. I'll get into 3D model in just a few minutes. Start depth, cutting depth, all this other stuff. I'm not going to concern myself with this just yet. Let's go ahead and look at just doing this as is as far as the 60-degree V-bit's going to go. And what I'm going to do is select the bitmap boundary. And now we're looking at line thickness. And I can zoom in here and I can already see it's kind of ragged. That may or may not be an issue. I don't know. Now, what I've discovered about this toolpath is that sometimes the thinner the line, the better the result. Not always, but that is generally speaking the case. You have to watch out with your line thickness because we have to remember how a V-bit works. It's going to carve as deep as it needs to carve to get this width of a line. So if we go too big, not only does it kind of mess with our design, it's also going to carve deeper. Now you may want a deeper carve, but that's something to keep in mind, that the depth of the carve is going to be reflected by your line thickness. That's one factor. Okay. And I'm just going to go ahead and calculate this as is right now. And that brings us over here into the preview. And I'll change the toolpath color on the preview to black so that you can see it. It's a nice high contrast. And we'll preview that toolpath. And that line thickness is okay, but again, we're kind of raggedy out here. Now, the number one question I get is, how can I convert this to vectors? How can I save these vectors and edit them? Because look at how raggedy that is. I want to clean that up. The thing to remember about this is there are no vectors in this project. Not one. This is a toolpath. This is not any vectors that you can go in and modify. And in that regard, it's the same as the molding toolpath. People ask, well, why can't I project text onto a molding toolpath? Because you're not creating a model. You're creating a toolpath. This would be similar to trying to import G-code and come up with a drawing. You can't do it. By the same token, there are no vectors created with this. It's just a toolpath. Now, there are some things you can do. And we'll get into that when I go into the 3D model portion of this. There are some things you can do to mitigate this and convert to vectors. Now, I'll go ahead and reset my preview and close this. I shouldn't have done that. Let me go ahead and bring that back up. Let me bring that back up real quick. The second biggest question I get, and Robert Dymock has already brought it up in Sketch Carve, is there a way to delete the line around the carving? Yes, there is. And I'll show you in just a minute on how to do that. In fact, I'll get into that right now. Let me jump back over here to the design page, design tab rather, and zoom in. If I click off, all we see is this portion of the bitmap, and that's fine. That's to be expected. But if we click on the bitmap, this pink line we're seeing out here is the border. That's the bitmap. Now, there's two ways you can take care of that. One is you can increase the size of the bitmap to match the size of your material. And if that works for your project, that's a good option. But there's another way of doing it, and that is back over here in the toolpath itself. One of your choices is to your machine limit boundary to a selected vector. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to draw a vector inside the bitmap border. Now, this is a bad bitmap to demonstrate this on, because if we look over here, for instance, this bitmap has been cropped to right up here against the black. So if I make any kind of a vector, it's probably going to cut into this black area right here. So let's look at this, doing it this way. Now I increased the size of my bitmap to 10 inches square. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a rectangle slightly smaller than that. Or I could use, yes, I could use a circle vector, but this is overall in general. The shape of the vector doesn't really matter. For this particular bitmap, yes, I could use a circle. But for any other, let's say you have something that is square or rectangular, what you'll want to do is you'll want to do some work in an image editor to fix this so that the border isn't right up against it. I could use a circle, I could use a rectangle, but I'm going to show you with a rectangle to just get inside these borders here, because it doesn't really matter. Well, I'll try a circle, but now I have to play with trial and error. Let's go ahead and try a circle, and let's try a 10-inch 10.0, create a circle. Radius, no. Control Z. Diameter. Thank you so much. And that's 10.0. Diameter. Create. Thank you very much. And now I'll center that up. And now I'll do the carve to this circle. And you can see out here that's already going to get rid of some of this shading out here. Let's see how it works. So I'll select both the image and the circle. We'll come over here back into that sketch carving toolpath. And now I'll change to the selected vector. And hold down Shift, select that vector. There we go. And let's see how well that works. So now, still got just a little bit of that border there. You can see how close they cropped to this image. We can also see a lot of these little tails out here, and that's going to make this look raggedy. But still, let's go ahead and let's preview it. And that's better than it was. That's much better than it was. We don't have that line. But the point I want to make is before you import your image, especially in a case like this where it's been cropped so close to the color that you're trying to, so close to the image. And this is where I cheesed myself off this morning, because I keep forgetting what software I have out here and what software I have in the house. I use an image editor called Paint Shop Pro. And one of the things that I can do in Paint Shop Pro is I can increase the canvas size of an image, not the image size. I'm not resizing the image. I'm resizing the canvas that image is drawn on. So what I'll do is I'll check the size of the image. Okay. I'm not sure I understand why does this surrounding vector exist as part of the toolpath at all. It's the border of the bitmap. So it's going to trace that border of the bitmap. So what I'm going to do is load this image into my image editing software and increase that canvas size. I want to make that canvas size big enough to where this border will now be out here somewhere and away from the area that I want to try to carve to, if that makes any sense. Again, I don't have an image editor out here so I can show you this. But by increasing the size of the canvas, my border will be out here. And now I can draw my vector that I want to trim to, that I want to machine to, and it'll totally eliminate that border. And the reason the surrounding vector exists as part of the toolpath is because it's carving the image, and the border, that outside border is considered part of the image. I don't like it either. I think they're working on a fix for that. But that's why, as it sits right now, that's why the ability to put a vector as a machine boundary is there. Now, in this case, I need to go ahead and make this vector a little bit smaller because it's still carving away part, it's still leaving part of that line here. So I'll make it 9.99, apply, and that brought it in a little bit. Now let's go back over and see if that eliminates that black line over here on this side. So I'll go into my sketch carving toolpath, and we look to be okay. Let's calculate it and give it a shot. And preview it. And that line is no longer there. So machining to a selected vector is how you get rid of that. So now, if you want to go edit G code rather than draw a square or circle, then that's up to you. The thing that I'm getting at is a lot of times the photo or the image needs to be edited, needs to be prepared before it's ready for import. Not every image is going to work, and not every image is going to work just very well. Let's see here. Could you trim outside the vector you created? The only way to trim outside that vector is to make it slightly smaller. You know, does that make sense? So again, remember, you're not creating vectors. You're creating a toolpath. There are no vectors over here to edit, which is why I say sometimes it's a toss-up as to whether sketch carving would work better for this or bitmap trace would work better for this. Another thing to do in your image editing software, when you save this, after you've increased the size of your border, do not save it as a JPEG file, a JPG file. Don't save it as a JPG file. Some people like PNG files. That's fine. I would recommend, and I have Mike Bernasconi to thank for this because I've checked it out and he's absolutely right. I would highly recommend saving it as a BMP file, a Windows bitmap file. That is saved without compression. And I'll show you the difference when we get into the 3D model portion of this. I would save that out of the image editing software as a BMP file. That will eliminate a lot of the stair stepping you get on these bitmap images. So AL says JPEG files lose data while BMP and PNG are both lossless. Yes, the main difference with a PNG and a BMP file is I find that BMP files are a lot smoother because you can zoom in on a PNG file and get that stair stepping. But a BMP, you have to zoom in a lot closer before you get that. And I'll demonstrate that here in just a minute. So bring your image into your image editing software. If it's cropped like this is real close and it's hard to get in there and create a vector around it where without cutting into the image, increase your canvas size so that you have more space out here, and then save that as a BMP file. Now, when it comes to, I'm going to go ahead and just delete this right now. Boom. All right. And we'll zip back over here into 2D view, center everything up, and I'm going to delete the bitmap and the vector and everything. And we'll get into using sketch carving with the 3D file. So we'll go into clip art, and I'm going to find something here. Let's go for critters. I don't know. No, I'm going to get a cherub here out of the decorative. So, I thought I had a cherub in here. Maybe it's under objects and people. There he is. There's the little cherub right there. And I'm going to increase his size quite a bit. That's good enough right there. And we'll go back over here to the design tab. Now again, because it is a 3D model, I already have my model resolution set to very high. I did that on initial job setup. And a word of caution on that. If you have your job set up at any level here at all, then you go back, then you add a 3D model to it, then decide you need to bump up your resolution. So you come over here and change this. The resolution of the model you have added will not change. You will have to get rid of that model, change this up, then bring that model in. Because once a model is brought in at a certain resolution, it will not change no matter what you do over here. So I have my model set up. I'm going to put a vector around that model. So I'll come over here under modeling tools, and there's create a vector boundary around the selected component. And I put a vector right here around the model. So let's jump over here into the Toolpaths tab, and I'm going to select both of them. I've got the vector and the model selected. And I'm going to come over to the sketch carving toolpath. Because it's a 3D model, the first thing it's going to do is put me over here into material setup, and it's going to tell me that the model thickness exceeds the material thickness. This is a sketch carve. I'm not carving the 3D model. The software doesn't care. So I have to come in and set my new model height 0.74, just so it'll quit nagging me. Then close it. Okay. Now it'll let me come out of material setup. So I come out of material setup and it puts me into sketch carving toolpath. I'm going to sketch carve a 3D model. That changes everything. You'll notice suddenly I have green lines out here. Whereas bitmap, I got nothing. So 3D model. And now I'm going to use, again, the selected vector. Right there. That's where the carving is going to end. It's not going to try to do anything else out here. Okay. So I'm going to decrease my line thickness just a little bit. Let's bring it down to 3, see what that does. And that was mainly based on this line right here. It's pretty thick. I think I can get along with that. I can get along with that, but I'm looking at my vector boundary out here, and I'm not liking it at all because I'm not getting a complete outline because of that vector boundary. So I'm going to change this to model boundary. Now I get a complete outline. So there is a time and a place for using the model boundary or the selected vector. That's my point here. And this is the time to check because I can go back to selected vector, but we can see down in here, it's okay, but I'm missing a lot of the outline. And I don't want to miss that outline. That's part of the model. So if I go with model boundary, it's going to end right there. And I'll get the complete outline. All right, so no change. I'm not putting in a start depth. I'm not putting in a flat depth. Well, my start depth is 0. It has to be. Using a 60-degree V-bit, and I'm going to just calculate it and see what we get. Reset my preview because I forgot to do that from the other bitmap. And change the color to black so you can see it, and we'll preview it. Now that's a pretty decent tracing. That actually worked out pretty well. There's enough detail in here that you can see what it is. Is it getting every single detail? Maybe, maybe not. And we can go back in to the toolpath. We can reset the preview, go back into the toolpath and play with that a little bit. But overall, in general, I think that looks pretty good. But again, there are no vectors involved. There are no vectors here that I can edit. Here's the workaround. There's almost always a workaround. There is a workaround. And that workaround is right here, save a preview image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I'm on top. I'm going to zoom in pretty close, but I want to get the whole thing in there. That's too close. That's about the best I can do and get the entire model in there. I'm either going to lose part of his elbow, part of his wing, part of his hair, or part of all of it. So I'll back out one. And that's what we're going to have to go with right there. Now I'm going to come over and I'm going to save a preview image. Now, before I even title this, if I hit this drop-down menu here, I have several different choices. I'm going to pick a Windows bitmap. And I'm going to call him Cherub 1. And I'm going to save it as a bitmap. Now, I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to save it as a JPEG. And we'll call him Cherub 1. Save it. And now, if I go to my folder, here are the two preview photos. Okay. This is the bitmap. And I'm going to zoom in on that bitmap. There is some stair stepping there from, not from the photo, but from the, yeah, that might be the photo. But if you look, you see how I'm zooming in, that is staying smooth. The stair step comes from my preview simulation. I must not have my simulation quality turned up. That is still rounded and smooth. Now, if I load the JPEG and I zoom in along the same area, we can see a lot of loss because of that compression. And I've got a bunch of artifacting out here on the edge. Let me go back and turn up the preview simulation quality here. Well, it's, it's extreme high. That's not too awful bad. But you see my point. The bitmap saves a better looking image. Let's see here. BMP and PNG should maintain exactly the same data. They differ in internal structure, and PNG also has the ability to include transparency data. Transparency data is irrelevant here. What we're looking at is resolution, the size of the pixels. Also, PNG is a compressed files. They are lossless, but it is a form of compression. Well, Michael's already addressed that. So I've got my, bring up my folder here. I've got my Cherub BMP. Now I can import that BMP and do a bitmap trace to get vectors from this 3D model. Now, if you're doing a bitmap, again, if you're sketch carving a bitmap, it doesn't really pay you to carve it and then do a bitmap trace. You've already got a bitmap. Just trace that. Don't trace the carving. But I can now come over here. Let's go back over here. I'm going to, now I'll just start a new instance of Aspire, start a new session, and I'll create a new file. Because I'm not going to be working with a 3D file here, I can turn it down to standard. I'm just going to be doing 2D vectors. And I've got 12 by 12 and 3/4 of an inch. Okay. And I will import a bitmap. I'm going to import the Cherub BMP, open it. And this is the bitmap I'm going to trace. So I'll go to trace bitmap. Now, you can either use color or black and white. It's totally up to you. What I prefer is keep it in color. Come over here in a nice black line and click that. And that's going to select those black colors right there. Maybe I'll do these. Let's see if that adds anything to it. Not really. So it doesn't hurt anything. I'll preview it, take a gander, and the rest of this is down to normal bitmap trace settings. I've got a little bit of noise here. I'll go ahead and bring my noise filter up to 4, preview that. And that got rid of a bunch of little tags and trailies. Okay, and bring that down and I'll click apply, close, and then a new feature I like, turn off the bitmap right there. And there are vectors I can work with. So I've taken that 3D model from the clip art, done the sketch carving toolpath, saved a BMP of the resulting carve, then brought it into Aspire and did a bitmap trace on that preview image. So that's the workaround. It does work. And it can be used for, just whatever you'd like to use it for. Let's do a standard VCarve toolpath. 90-degree V-bit, I think, is too big. Let's go back to my 60-degree V-bit. And I'll turn off the flat depth. It's going to carve to wherever it needs to carve to. Calculate. Oh, yeah. Let's try that again, Rabbit. Let's get rid of the 1/2 inch 2-flute end mill. I don't think it's going to fit. Let's calculate that. There we go. That's better. And turn it black so you can see it. And there's the V carving based on that 3D model. So there is a workaround, but again, because the sketch carving toolpath does not create any vectors, it just creates a toolpath. There is nothing out here to edit. Okay. And it's the same with the molding toolpath. You're not creating a model, you're creating a toolpath. So, does that make any sense? Everybody with me so far? Okay, let's see here. Can you do a 3D carve, then do a sketch and project onto the 3D carve? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And that's the way that you'll do it. Let me see, I've got my, okay. Yeah, I think I can. Yes. Let me go ahead and do a 3D finishing toolpath with this. I'm going to select I think an 1/8 inch ball nose is way too big. Let's do a 1/16 of an inch tapered ball nose. Select. And I'm going to get rid of that one. Remove it. And I'm going to do to the selected vector, which is my vector outline right here. Do a boundary offset of 0.625. And we'll just call that good. This is for demonstration only. These are not the settings that I would use for this. I would use I would use a, first of all, I use a clear roughing path tool path. So let's calculate this. And it's going to take it a couple minutes because all right, there we go. Now we'll reset the preview. Now that I have a 3D model out here, I need to come in to the sketch carving toolpath, and now that's there. Project toolpath onto 3D model, and I can calculate. Okay, so that's done. So I'm going to move that down because sketch carving needs to be done after the 3D carving. And we'll preview this. I don't know how long that's going to take. It may take a while, but that's all right. We have time. Well, let me clear you here. Boom. So this will take a bit. That's actually a pretty large model for that tiny bit, but it's going to look pretty. Now, when we're projecting a sketch carving toolpath onto a model, that's when we really have to pay attention to line thickness. My line thickness on this was 3, I believe, and that may be too big. So you really have to pay attention. And this is carving a 1/16 of an inch beyond the vector outline. So that adds a little bit more to the mix. So we'll see how this turns out. So there is my 3D carving. I'm going to bring that in just a little bit so we can see if the sketch carving toolpath adds any detail to it or not. And now we'll preview that. And it does a little bit. Let me take the color off of that. No fill. It does a little bit, but this is what I mean when I say you've got to be very careful with your line width, your line thickness. So let me undo last to get rid of that. We'll go into sketch carving, and we have to have a thickness. It cannot be 0. So we'll go with a line thickness of 1. And we'll calculate it. And now we'll see if it adds detail. Nope. All right. So let me undo last, and now let me take a smaller V-bit, because that is a 60-degree. Let's get rid of that and go with a, let's go with a 15-degree V-bit. Select that. And we'll calculate that and see what happens. This just also may be the wrong type of model. And we'll see how that works. We'll preview that. That's better. That is better. I still am not sure. It does add a little bit more relief and a little bit more detail. But let me undo that and experiment with something else. And we're experimenting together, okay? Because I've not done this yet. Let's try, instead of a V-bit, let's try a smaller tapered ball nose so we don't have that point. Let's try it with this has got a 1/4 millimeter tip radius. Let's try it with that and see what we get. Maybe a little bit better. Maybe a little bit better. Let's see. And we'll preview that. I don't know. I still think that this may be the wrong model to do something like that. And it comes down to this here. If there was a way to limit it to, say, his wings or his hair, I might be okay with it. But I really don't know. I really don't think that I like it. So the short answer to the long question is, yeah, you can do it. But should you do it? I don't know. I think that's up to you. You know, just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean that you should. You know, can I make the line width 0.25? I could, but why? That's just going to make the line width wider than it already is. I'm trying to make the line width smaller. So now here's another, well, Russell has a point here. With Sketch Carve, the model can be shallow or subtle. And Ayal is saying it's a bit funny. We're trying to improve the model, assuming it would look better by extenuating some of the depth transitions. Oh, exactly. Exactly. But what I'm getting at is just because I'm trying it over this model, like I said, this may not be a good model to do this with. But if you were going to sketch carve, say, on a dome or down in a dish, then that's what it would be a good use for. Or if you were going to sketch carve, let's say you had a 3D letter, like a monogram, and you wanted to sketch carve a filigree pattern on top of that monogram, that's when I would use something like that. Isn't 0.25 smaller than 1? Well, yes, it is, but this is not inches. I don't think I can put fractions here, 0.25. I don't, well, it's letting me do it so far. Let's calculate. But that isn't, the point is that is not inches. You know what, John? Maybe that will work. Let's preview it. Well, I didn't do anything. Undo last. Well, maybe a little bit around the edges. But it didn't do anything else. Yeah, it just kind of went around the outline, which is what I would do with a end mill when cutting this out anyway. But it didn't do anything out here. Now, see, that's something that they didn't say in the tutorial. They worked in whole numbers. I did not. Did not know you can go into fractions here. Let's try 0.5. Okay, we're going to get a little bit of a difference out here. Not much. Let's preview that. Yeah, I'm not seeing really any difference at all, even in these areas up here. And it cut, yeah, there's a little bit right there where it cut in. And I'll be honest, I'm really not much for it. But where it would come in would be if I were going to sketch carve this cherub over a dome or something smaller, another 3D model. The point to be made is you can't project it onto a 3D model until there's a 3D model out there. So it might be good on this model if you spray the model white, then carve the sketch carve and hand paint that a contrasting color to really embolden it. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You could also paint it white and use a thin wash of a darker color to just get in here right around the edge and just wipe the entire thing. Kind of an antiquing type of a style. And finishing is a whole nother realm, you know. So yeah. But yeah, good point, John. You can use fractions in here. And that was never explained. I didn't realize you could do that. So thank you for that. All right. Let's see. There was something else I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about sketch carving. And then I wanted to talk about, let me get out of, there was another toolpath that I wanted to get into. And for the life of me, I can't remember what it was now. Oh man, that's all right. That's what it's like when I go live. Uh, I forget half of what I wanted to do. That's all right. Well, oh yeah, I remember. I wanted to talk about the keep out zones. And mainly what I wanted to talk about the keep out zones was a warning. And that is, let me get out of this, go over here. And I'll go ahead and delete all that. That is if we want to create, let me delete all these as well. Delete this. All right. And, oops, I meant to delete all. Delete all. Over here on our material, we can now set up keep out zones. Keep out zones sounds good, but I want to give you a warning about them. Let's go ahead and create a keep out zone. Oh, I got to draw vectors first. I knew that. Let's say that we're going to put a clamp. We're going to put a clamp right here. And that clamp is going to be, let's say it's an inch wide. Nope, I just did the wrong thing. Let's take that back to 2.8. 2.8 inches width in X and 1 inch high in Y. And we'll apply that. That's fine. I'm going to put a clamp there. I'm going to hold down Control, and I'm going to drag a copy straight down, put a clamp there. Then I'm going to select both of these, and again, hold down Control and drag another pair over here. So I've got my clamps. Those are my keep out zones. I don't want the tool to come in here during my toolpath. And let's go ahead and let's put something out here. Well, no, here's what we'll do. We'll import that star bitmap, our crescent moon, and I'm going to increase the size a bit out here, about like so. Okay. And I can see right now I need to move these clamps down. So let's go ahead and do that. There we go. So that's a little bit better. I'm going to bitmap trace and select that color, preview. I'm going to take my noise up to 4 and my corner fit, I'm going to go pretty loose on that. Preview, that's better. Preview, that's better. And I'm going to bring my noise filter all the way up to 10. Preview, that's much better. Apply, close, turn off the bitmap. Now I'm not concerned about how nice these vectors are out here. What I'm concerned about is I'm concerned about the keep out zones. Okay. So I'm going to back out, go over here to my toolpath tab, and I'm going to select my keep out zone vectors. I'm going to go over here, manage the keep out zones. Now, I've got the vectors selected, and I want to put a little bit of clearance around this because that's the size of my clamp. I don't want it to get any closer than 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to say 0.25. That'll keep the bit 1/4 of an inch away from these clamps. And I'll click Create from Selection. So that has just created a keep out zone. All right. So I'll close. Now I'm going to select all my vectors, and I'm going to do a VCarve toolpath. And I'm not going to use the clearance tool. I'm just going to use, I'll go with a 90-degree V-bit because it's big. And there it is. Select that one. And we'll calculate. There's overlaps and intersections. I'm going to continue anyway. I know that. I haven't cleaned up those vectors. It's nasty looking vectors. Uh-oh, the tool's going to cut through the material. So I do have to use the clearance tool, but I'm not going to use the 1/2 inch bit. I'll use a 1/8 inch end mill, select, and I'll do a flat depth of 0.25. Just because that's going to carve all the way through it. Now I'll calculate. Continue anyway. Keep out zones violation. The toolpath could not be created without violating the keep out zones. Moves where the toolpath violates the keep out zones will be marked in the toolpath display in the 3D view. Okay. So where is the issue? Oh, well, let's reset the preview. And where is the issue? The issue is right here. There's that issue. So I'm going to have to move this clamp as well. All right, that's fine. Let's turn the tool paths off. Let's go back over here into the 2D view. You're starting to see what some of the issues with keep out zones are. It takes a while to set them up. Let's move them straight up. Get them out of the way, and while I'm at it, I'll move these down. Get them out of the way. That should be all right. Now, close this. Go into the keep out zones. We will do this. Select these vectors. I'm going to clear the zones, and I'm going to create from those selections. Close. And now I want to go back in and recalculate the toolpath. Continue anyway. All right, I got a clean toolpath now. Now the warning is something to watch out for. Let's see here. Do the keep out zones cover the tool's depth in the spindle if you're using deep cuts? No. That's one of the warnings. I'm sitting here gesturing to the camera, and I forgot I had this on full screen layout. That is one of the warnings. It's just going to keep the center of the bit away from these zones. If you're using, say, a 1/4-inch end mill, and your spindle comes down where the bit is nowhere near that clamp or that zone, that doesn't mean that your spindle housing itself won't smack that clamp. It's not going to save you from the spindle itself, your Z-axis carriage, any linear rails, anything like that. It's going to keep the bit away. It's going to take the, it's not just the center of the bit, Eyal. It's the entire diameter of the bit. So if you have a 1/4-inch end mill here, it's going to, it'll keep the entire 1/4-inch diameter away from that zone. If you have a 2-inch bit in here, it'll keep that entire 2-inch bit away from this zone. Some toolpaths, what it will not do. Now this one's doing okay. If you remember how to read a toolpath, your bitmap is, your tool's going to come up around that keep out zone, come over here and start carving. It's going to carve its way around, do all of its X, Y, and Z moves and everything else. And when it's finished, it's going to come down here, then go over to XYZ home. Not all toolpaths will do this in the keep out zone. There's a gentleman by the name of Milo Scott. I follow him on Facebook, and he demonstrated this in playing around with some keep out zones. He didn't use clamps. He just he set some blocks of wood on a sheet of material, and he simulated a toolpath. And when the toolpath got finished, the bit was up in here somewhere. It took the shortest route to get back home. The carve ended here, and that bit went over here like so, and then came down and went right through the center of that clamp. So be very, very careful. Personally, I would tend to want to use keep out zones if I was setting my XYZ 0 to the center, because I can pretty much, not always, but I can pretty much guarantee that I'm not going to hit a clamp way out here if all my carving is done here. And this is where my XYZ 0 is, and this is where my home position is. Another thing to watch out for is when it's time for a tool change if you have an automatic tool changer. If you're out here and your automatic tool changer's back here somewhere, is this going to lift up and go right through that clamp to get to the next tool position? So you got to be careful on where that goes. It looks like the tool diameter is ignored in the bottom left, or am I missing something? It looks like it moved the center of the tool out of the clearance you have set. Now I'm using on this, I'm using what was I using? An 1/8 inch end mill for the clearance pass. That 1/8 inch end mill is going to miss. My V-bit is going to miss too. Let me turn off. That's the V-bit toolpath there. So my 1/8 inch end mill is way outside of that clearance area. Okay. I don't think I can if I go over here to the design toolpath, can I measure? Let me, come on, get down here. There we go. Can I measure between 2 points? I want to measure here to here. No, it won't let me measure in the 3D view. Dadgummit. All right, that's fine. Let me go to the 2D view. And it's not going to show me my rapid moves. Dadgummit. Okay. Well, anyhow, I can't measure that, but I'm willing to bet you that's more than that's an 1/8 of an inch away. Okay. Now, again, this is just the clearance pass. This is the 1/8 inch end mill, and it's going to go around and carve out here. All right. Now, when it goes home, where's it going to go? We don't know. We don't know where it's going to go. Now, if I go to turn on the VCarve, because the VCarve V-bit is bigger diameter, it's going to move further away from this area because it's a larger diameter, and then go that way. So, can you edit the G code so that after the cut, it doesn't return home, but only lifts the Z and then stop above the piece? Sure, you can. You can edit the G code to do anything. You can edit the G code to do that. You can but then again, that doesn't help you if you have an automatic tool changer and it picks up and heads for this tool position right over that clamp. That's what I'm getting at. So either way, you're going to have to take some time in figuring out where you're going to put these clamps, and you're going to have to measure and put those clamps where you say you're going to put them. Because if you set up a keep out zone over here and you put your clamp over here instead because there's something wrong and you can't fit it there, now you got to come back and change that keep out zone to reflect where you're putting that clamp. Now, there are a bunch of fixes. There are a bunch of workarounds, because you're absolutely right, 8th Center. You can go in and you can edit your G code to where wherever it's finished, let's say it finishes the carve at this point right here, the Z just lifts straight up. Then you don't have any concerns. You can edit the G code for that. But the broader point is that you have to be careful and you have to watch for stuff like this. So, this might be a good time to use screws, or blue tape and CA glue. All I'm getting at is I think this is a good idea. I think this is a great feature, but I could see where it would be real easy to get real complacent with this and think that because you have the keep out zones, you're covered for everything. So maybe just watch and, see. Now, again, this also comes down to the post processor. If you are a wizard with post processors, you can maybe modify a post processor so that it will take that route and these keep out zones into account. That's way above my pay grade. I'm not a post processor editor, believe me, but I know a lot of you are. So if you can come up with a post processor modification that would fix that, great. But personally, I'm not saying don't use it. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that personally, just for me, if I was going to use a keep out zone for clamping something, I would set my home position to be the center. That's where I would set my XYZ 0 and have my home position there so that it starts right here, it carves whatever it's doing, and then goes right back to the center of it. That way it stays away from all of this out here. So just fair warning. So let's go ahead and pull that down and let's get back over to your questions. I know there were a lot more over here. John Thompson says, if you look at the preview before your cut, as you're showing, you will have an idea where it's going to travel to and fro. And yes, you will. And as I said, that's what brought this whole thing up to begin with. It's like, oh, holy cow. That's going to be fine going out, but what about coming back? So let's see here. Screw this. Pass me that CA glue. Well, again, I'm not trying to discourage anybody from using it because I do think it's a good idea. For instance, I have a little jig that I use, and I've showed it before. It's very simple. It's just a straight edge, a straight piece of plywood that has a couple of toggle clamps screwed onto it. And I use that for when I'm doing keyholes. I can put that straight edge up there so that I know it's parallel with my x-axis, screw it down into my T-track, clamp that board, that project that I'm going to keyhole in there, clamp it down, then run my keyhole. Pop those two clamps, lift it out, put my new project in, clamp it down. Well, now I can program those keep out zones so that they shouldn't hit those clamps. And I think it's a great idea. You just have to be careful and watch it, to make sure that it doesn't do anything unexpected. So let's see here. Can you use the home coordinates and the material setup on the toolpath side to have it return to the middle after running the job toolpath, even if the XY datum start at, say, the lower left? I've not experimented with that. There's your homework assignment. We need to check that out because the only way we're going to find out is to save G-code and see where it goes. But what Kurt's referring to is, let me uncheck that. Let's close this. Let's go into material setup. There's your home start position. Okay. Your X0, Y0, and your Z gap above the material. Now, if I set that XY datum there, let's see what it does. Okay, and it's going to have to recalculate all the tool paths. That's fine. Keep out zone violation. All right, let's see what happens. Look at all the keep out zone violations. I don't claim to understand this. How is that going to violate the keep out zones when the keep out zones are way the hell and gone out here? Maybe I need to go back into my keep out zones and see what we got. Oh, that's why they're way the hell and gone out there. Okay. Clear zones. Let's try that again, Revit. And there we'll create from selection. close. Now let's recalculate that toolpath. And I know there are going to be, continue anyway. It's telling me the vector validator found a bunch of overlaps and what have you. All right, now there we go there. All right, now with my XYZ0 right here in the center, there's my origin point. That should not go anywhere near these clamps. But just in case, boom, there we go. So, so if you have your XYZ0 set here, let's go back. Well, I don't want to do that on this again. I don't want to go through all that again. I'll practice it and I'll get back to you. And we'll do this as part of unfinished business in maybe next week, maybe the week after. I'm not sure. Let's see. I know you don't have it, but does the Mazo show where keep out zones are on the preview? I don't have the Mazo controller. I use Mach 4. And again, I haven't created any G code and loaded it into Mach 4. And the Mach 4 I have on this computer won't let me load G code because it won't let me get past certain screens because I don't have a CNC actually hooked up to it. So literally no end of the things I can't do, by the way. But I will get back to you on this, Kurt. We'll take it up as unfinished business because that's an interesting point. I've not done it that way. I have edited G code so that after it's finished cutting, it will move to an area off of the material. My attitude is this: you get done carving, and it comes back to its home position. In my case, say the lower left corner. What's the first thing I do? I lift up the Z and I move it back out of the way so I can get to the project. Why not have the G code do that? So yeah, I've gotten in and I've edited it to do that. And I think I showed it on a live stream one time, but I don't like to show people how to edit G code because I'm not that good at it and I don't want to steer somebody wrong. And I will not try to show you how to get in and edit a post processor because I really don't know what I'm doing there. I've done it and it's worked, but there's a lot of pitfalls and a lot of things you got to watch out for. So, but I will get back to it. All right. Do we have any other questions? And maybe somebody who has a Mazo can let 8 Center know if it shows the keep out zones on the toolpath preview when you plug the G code into the software. Let's see here. New features are cool, but not very refined. That's true. Believe me, Russell, we did beta test the heck out of it, but it's one of those cases of until people are out using it in the real world and the developers are seeing how it's used, it's one of those cases of they don't know something is broke until somebody tells them. Now, they have been told about the tool change, potential crash there, so they're aware of it. And but so far, no updates to it have come out, simply because they got to do some more research on it. So they are aware there's some issues. But if you are doing anything within the software and you have a crash, or you have what I mean by a crash, if the software crashes, or you get an error message that you're not familiar with, you've never seen before, just do a screen capture, and it's real easy to do. Very easy to do. I'll do one right now to show you what I'm talking about. First, I got to open up a program that every Windows computer has on it, and that's Paint. Okay, I know a lot of guys do snipping tool. I use paint. Then whichever monitor you happen to be using, you go to that monitor and just click somewhere on that monitor. Down on your keyboard, you have a button that says print screen, print SCRN. Just tap that. Then go over here to paint, right, and go to file. Nope, not file. Well, come on, where are you? All right, fine, no problem. Click somewhere in the canvas there, Control V, and that pastes. So now I've got paint in my paint. Control Z, I don't want to paste that. I want to paste this. So click over here, print screen, bring up paint, Control V, and there's that screen right there. Take that screenshot and send it to Vectric along with the description. Take a screenshot of that error message. Yeah, that would probably be a good thing, wouldn't it, Frank? Let me do that again. Control Z, and let me share my screen so you can see what I'm talking about. Again, this is a program that every Windows computer has. It's called Paint. All right. So I'm going to minimize that. And I've got an error message out here. Let's say, for the sake of argument, I'm going to tap that print screen button on my keyboard, go into Paint, Control V, paste that screen right there. Then File, Save As, JPEG, whatever, and send them a copy of that screen grab. Send that to Vectric support. Again, if they don't know what's broken, they can't fix it. Okay? So if they can see which error message you've got and what's on your computer at the time, they can better help you out. So that's the best way to go about reporting something to Vectric, especially when you're having a problem. And this is especially true in something like right now where we've got a new version of the software. There are only so many beta testers who can test the software, but until it's out in the wild, no two people, I'd be willing to bet you no two people have exactly the same programs on their computers. They're not running the same settings. They're not running the same scaling. They don't have the same apps and programs running in the background. So they can't really refine it until it's out there in the wild and they see how people are actually using it. And refinements, they come in waves. I mean, we're up to, in fact, I need to update because we're up to 12.006 now, and I've got 005 here. They're fixing bugs, they're making improvements, and that's what we have to do. So again, they can't fix it if they don't know what's broke. So by all means, report it. So now AL says Windows button plus Shift plus S, and you can cut exactly what you want to begin with. Yeah, or you can just hit that print screen button. And then I throw it into Paint. I know a lot of people like the snipping tool. 6 of one, half dozen of the other, potato. Either way, give me fries. You know, whatever works for you. So, 8 Center wants to know, did you get any sketch carves done this week you can show? No, I did not. And the reason is because I've got a big project coming that I'm finally getting a chance to get on. And if you look right there, there's a piece of material. There's another piece of material. I finally got everything, well, everything except my track hangers off of the CNC. There's a big project coming, and hopefully I can get to it this afternoon after I get back from the grocery store. But that's inside baseball stuff. So, are there any questions about sketch carving or the keep out zones? or anything else that we talked about today. Next week, I hope to debut this big project. Here's hoping. I mean, fingers crossed. The video is half shot. Now I got to get the other half shot and edited. So if there are no questions at all, excuse me, hiccups again. Oh, wait, there is one other question up here. I'm sorry. Percy Kuka, longtime visitor. It all came to a standstill due to a motorcycle accident. Well, I hope you're well on the road to recovery. Had to give away my CNC, about to book a new one and restart. Bit confused between stepper and servos. Does servos make a big difference? Yes. Yes. If it's at all within your budget, if it's within your budget, I would go with servos over steppers. Yes. They are more expensive, but you'll get a much better quality cut. You will be much happier with servos than with steppers. But again, they are expensive. And that's when you're getting more into the industrial side. And I don't know, I've heard it explained that there is hobby level, which is what most of us are. Then there's professional level, which is what a lot of the bigger machines like the Avid is. And then there's industrial level. Now you're talking about the big kahunas. If you can afford servos, yes, I wouldn't hesitate. But just know they have a price tag. Cha-ching! So, all right. I hope that answered that, Percy. And good luck. I hope you're on the mend. I hope you're getting better. There before the grace of God go I with the motorcycle accident. Came close, but managed to save it. Okay. Channel members, tomorrow we're going to get into, I've had several questions. We're going to get into some 3D modeling, and we're also going to be getting into a few things very similar to the 3D modeling that you can do in VCarve. So it will not be Aspire only. It will be Aspire or VCarve or both if you prefer. That's 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern tomorrow evening. Check the community tab for a link to that members only live stream. If you don't know what I'm talking about, or if you'd like to find some information on becoming a channel member, click the little join button down there next to the subscribe button. A panel's going to pop up. That's all it's going to happen. A panel's going to pop up and a video is going to play. You're not committed to anything, honest. It's free. The video is going to tell you all about channel membership. We have a great bunch of people, made some very good friends through this. And come join us. Join our reindeer games. For everybody, I hope to see you next Sunday. I'm not going to say what it's going to be about because that could change depending upon if I get this done and get the video edited. That's about it. So thank you for spending part of your Sunday with me. I really appreciate it. And until next week, y'all take care.